Kristen, aka Black Cherry. Welcome to my channel where I talk about movies, scary and non-scary, but mostly scary with the basis of just wanting to talk about movies. So I have a confession. I am not consistent at all on my channel. Clearly. And it's been a quarter of the year and I've failed miserably with trying to be consistent at all. But we're gonna try something different. I'm going to try to at least post 2 times a month. Maybe even more frequently, depending on my mood. Who knows? So we're gonna try this thing out. Anyway, where was I going? Let's talk about Fear Street 1994. Now, if you haven't heard of Fear Street, either you don't have Netflix or you just live on under a rock somewhere. Fear Street is actually a trilogy on Netflix. There's 3 movies. Sorry, 3 movies that are on the basis of R.L. Stine's books, also by the same name, Fear Street. But I specifically want to get into Fear Street 1994 because that's the only one I've seen right now, and I am trying to get a good consensus of each movie individually so I can kind of make just a general overview of it later. See how that works. Okay, so Fear Street 1994. Like I said, it's a Netflix original, came out in 2021. It's based on an adult series on R.L. Stine, Fear Street. And despite the reviews that I've seen on IMDb, I was actually quite impressed just with the story, not necessarily with like how accurate it depicts the 90s. I wasn't really paying too much attention to that, but I was paying attention to the story in general. So let's try to go over the overview. So the movie starts out in a mall. We have a young girl. She's working there, seemingly in a mall, empty mall, because it's about to close. And she asked her friend to give her a ride later. She is then, to be honest, this movie just goes off rip right off the back. We get a whole chase scene, a whole murder slasher scene that happens, very reminiscent to Scream. Not even just like the whole mask thing, just the cinematic presentation of it is very similar to Scream. Instead of a ghost face, you got skull face. Turns out, so she is being murdered viciously, and it turns out that it was her friend. She pulls the mask off his face, and it is the guy that she was going to get a ride from, which was really strange because there was no inclination of him being creepy or murdery at all. Then again, I don't like scary movies always do this. Like you always get like that one person where you're just like, oh yeah, he's clearly the murderer. This doesn't do that. It's literally, it just happens out of nowhere. Turns out this is a running theme in the city. So the city that this takes place in is Shadyside, Ohio. They have been plagued by gruesome and violent murders for years. Seemingly at random. It's normally just normal people that have no reason to go on a murderous rampage all of a sudden just snap and start slashing people all over the place. Quite interesting. Uh, Many of the Shadyside residents seem to think that this is the result of a 3 century-year-old curse placed on the city, or placed on the city by the witch Seraphir, who was executed in 1666. R.L. Stine is not subtle at all. But I love his books. Especially, I used to read his books all the time. Like, I collected pretty much all of the Goosebumps collection. I was a creepy kid. I read a lot, and they were mostly scary stories because I thought they were interesting. Anyway, so yeah, 300-year curse, which, whatever. This seems to only be exaggerated more when we get introduced to the sister city of Shadyside, Sunnyvale. Sunnyvale is complete opposite of Shadyside. Shadyside, like I said, is been plagued by a lot of murderous happenings, events for years. A lot of the residents there tend to be, how do I say this, PC? A little bit on the, I'll just call it the ghetto. They basically depict it as like the have-nots, so to speak. Versus Sunnyvale, which is very, very affluent. Everyone in there has like a mansion or something, and they are considered like the safest place to live, and they're literally right next to each other. Like, here's Sunnyvale, here's Shadyside. One's murder capital, one's safest place to live. And the Shadyside residents seem to think that there has to do with this curse from 300 years ago. So that's kind of just the basis of the place in general. We get into the characters later. So we get introduced to the characters, and the first one that we see is Dina. Dina is what I'd like to call your typical edgy teen. She's more of an edgelord than anything. You even get a sense of that in the beginning of the movie, because she's just writing hate letters to this person named Sam, who we'll get introduced to later, and she's clearly upset. And we'll figure out why later. And then pans into her brother, Josh, who is a nerd in a sense. You clearly get the sense that this guy is on the computer all the time. And they even got the whole chat rooms and AOL type theme going on. So you really get a sense of 1994. Those are pretty much kind of our main protagonists. We then get introduced to Dina's friends, Katie and I think Sam. Katie is like your typical cheerleader. She's very outgoing. She's like on the student council or something. I don't know. And then there's Sam, who is your oddball, very weird and stuff. Now, the thing with Katie, she's pretty interesting. Even though she's like, on the outside, she's depicted like as this good girl or whatever, but in reality, Katie and Sam are drug dealers. Seriously? I'll be back. I'm back. My puppy just learned how to use the potty bells, but he's smart because he definitely uses it more to just go outside and not do anything, instead of actually going to the bathroom. So, yeah. Anyway, where was I? I think I was talking about Katie and Sam. Okay, so yeah, Katie and Sam, not Katie and Sam, Katie and Simon, Simon, I forgot his name. Anyway, these two are Dina's friends. They're drug dealers. And I'm not talking about like, oh, yeah, you get some weed here or there. No. They got people. They got pill people, and they know all the lingo that goes with it. So, okay, so they're at school or whatever. Dina is confiding in them on how angry she is at Sam because they broke up, and we don't know who Sam is yet, but we will. And she's thinking of not going to like this function, this pep rally / vigil for the murdered girl in the like literally first scene of the movie, because she doesn't want to see Sam. And her friends convince her to go, so she goes or whatever. And it's really like important to see that like the disparity between Shadyside and Sunnyvale. Like clearly you got these preppy jocks with their $1 million houses and their affluent futures coming up, and then you have Shadyside, which literally pans out to like look like the have-nots, the ghetto people. Always have issues. There's always murders there, and you know they do point that out. We finally get to see Sam. She is the cheerleader who, I mean, she used to live in Shadyside, and she and Dina were dating, but then after her parents, I guess, got divorced or whatever, her mom had her move to Sunnyvale. And Dina was pissed, and I would say misguidedly pissed too, because she blamed Sam for everything. Like, she's the one that broke up with her. It wasn't Dina broke up with her first. And is mad at her that she moved to Sunnyvale, as if she had a fucking choice. But that's neither here or there. Clearly, this relationship is reminiscent to like teenage angst and drama, because it makes no sense. And quite frankly, I think the relationship is toxic. But yeah. So, whatever, they get into it. Sam confronts Dina. It was just like, you know, what the fuck's your problem? And she's like, you moved on, and now you're dating this jock guy, and which makes no sense, because like, you know, we used to be a thing, you know, or whatever. You're a lesbian, and I'm just like, she could be bi, but I don't know, maybe she was just trying something. I don't know. Like I said, who cares? So, I mean, before they actually get into like the like cheese and grits of things, like the fight breaks out between Sunnyvale and Shadyside, because Sunnyvale is just all like, why all y'all be murdering each other? And Shadyside's like, shut the hell up, you're not even remotely in our business. And yeah, fight. So they're on the bus or whatever, and due to, I guess, rivalry and just bitter angst and angriness, the Sunnyvale football people are in their car tailgating the Shadyside bus and I guess throwing things. And Dina sees that Sam, her ex, is in the front seat of the car, and clearly by her face she's like uncomfortable with this whole situation, but Dina, being the toxic person she is, just is floored. She's just all like, fuck Sam, fuck Sunnyvale, we're gonna fight back. And so she opens the back door of the bus and proceeds to push the cooler with all the water or lemonade or whatever for the team out the door, and it hits the car and they drive off and get into an accident. Dina's just like, oh shit, I did not mean for that to happen. And you know, she's checking on the people there, mostly Sam. Sam ends up somehow out in the car. She's hurt pretty bad. And you know, Dina's like, I'm sorry, and Sam's just all like, what the fuck is wrong with you? And then we get like this short clip vision through the eyes of Sam, and she sees this woman screaming. I think it's at this point that we realize that wherever they landed in the crash is tied to this curse or plays a significant part, because after that, weird things start happening. So Sam's off to the hospital. Dina feels like crap, as she should, because she almost killed somebody. But again, neither here nor there. They go to the hospital and just weird things start happening. Dina sees the skull mask assailant person on the other side of her house. She's thinking like it's the boyfriend of Sam, and immediately gets angry again, tells him to fuck off, even though we don't know who that person in the mask was. She gets mad, and everyone's just like, what the hell? And I guess this skull mask person is not only stalking Dina at her place, they're also stalking her friend's place, because they end up getting broken into, and she sees the skull mask guy and he just leaves afterwards. Like, it was weird. So they all just come to the conclusion that this is clearly Sam's fault, and they go to the hospital to go and confront her. This is how we know that Katie and Simon, or whatever the hell his name is, are real drug dealers, because I mean they got their pill guy in the hospital. So Dina bypasses the nurse's desk and she confronts Sam, who's like in the hospital bed with an IV and everything, and she's talking to the guy, the dude, and they get into an argument like, this is all your fault, why don't you call off your boyfriend? And Sam's like, why the hell are you angry? Like, what's going on? You broke up with me, why are you being weird? And then that's when all hell breaks loose, and the dude that was in there gets stabbed by Skull Mask. So clearly this wasn't Sam or her new boyfriend or even the Sunnyvale teens at all. It was someone else. So we got the whole chasing and running or whatever. The Skull Mask guys just slashing up nurses and stuff and stabbing people. The teens end up getting into an ambulance and are driving away, running away from this person. Now, I mean, I can skip all like the details, but they eventually find out why this skull mask person is, they figure out that this skull mask person is the guy that killed the girl in the first movie, which makes no sense because he's dead. And we see 3 more ghostly characters: the girl from the 1950s, and this guy, and very, very reminiscent of Jason Voorhees, who did like a murder at a campsite, mass murder at a campsite or whatever, and he was in 1978. So all these people are dead, and they're all coming back to chase these people. They don't know why, but they figure out that, oh yeah, they disturbed the grave of Sarah Fier. That's what they think. That they come to that conclusion with the help of Josh, because he's really into that kind of eclectic cult type sphere and conspiracy theories and all that stuff. And so, okay, they go back to the site where the crash was. They realize then that these ghosts aren't really after them, they're after Sam. Because while Sam was in the crash, she bled and touched all over the grave of Sarah Fier. So now all these ghastly features are coming after Sam. To kill her, basically. Now, Dina, she's certainly shocked. I mean, she was angry at Sam, but she doesn't want her to die. I think her friend Katie, though, is like a real ass person. She's like, oh, well, they just want Sam. Well, fuck her. Let them kill her, and we can just go on about our lives. Well, I mean, I feel like that's a natural sentiment, because the only reason why they're chasing them is because of Sam, and she's with them, and they're covered in her blood, and blah, blah, blah. But, of course, we're not doing that. This is the movie that's going to be based off the power of friendship. So they decide to help Sam out and try to get these ghastly features from trying to kill her. Now, according to the curse, it only subsides with the death of the person that is, like, the main point, or I guess the focal point of the curse at that particular time. So they come up with the bright idea that what they're going to do is kill Sam and bring her back to life. So luckily, they got a couple of drug dealers on their team, so they come up with this cocktail of drugs for Sam to take so she can overdose and then bring her back to life with some EpiPens. They figure that out. They try to get Sam to eat all these cocktails of drugs. It doesn't happen. She ends up throwing it all up. The ghostly creatures are attacking them again now. They found them because, again, Sam is the focal point. And they end up... essentially, it does work. She does die. And they bring her back to life. Dina and Josh do. And yeah, supposedly the story was supposed to stop there. But again, this is a trilogy, so you know that there's more to it. In the end of 1994, Sam ends up being possessed by the curse as well, just as the boy at the beginning of the movie did, and is trying to murder Dina and Josh. and then it kind of cuts off sort of there. But yeah, that's basically what happens. Now, my thoughts on the film. I really, really like the characters. Despite me calling Dina and Sam's relationship completely toxic, it's really very not reminiscent, but it does reflect like kind of the childishness of like a young romance at that time, where you're still trying to figure each other out, you're still trying to figure yourself out, and it's kind of difficult in that space. And I mean, it's 1994. Being gay isn't like a new thing at all, but there were still some hurdles that same-sex relationships had to get through. Still, but they depict that very well, and it was just showing like the growth in the characters, especially Sam. She even though she moved to Sunnyvale, she felt her most comfortable with Dina, and she had to come to a realization that she loves Dina, and her mom's just gonna have to deal with it or accept her or whatever, very like coming of age, like this is who I am, blah blah blah. But even so, the characters in general are not two-dimensional at all. Like, you wouldn't think Katie would be a drug dealer. Simon, despite him being a goofball and oddball, seems to be very, very reliable. Almost as a friend. Although technically his character was like really a side note. Like, how do you make yourself a third wheel in a group of 5? I don't know. But yeah. And Josh, despite his character being like this nerd that's into these very, very strange conspiracy theories, he ends up being extremely reliable, and it's not in that same like typical movie dynamic where he's a nerd and he's supposed to get picked on. It's not that. Okay, my phone's about to die. So yeah, the characters are not two-dimensional. They're very well written out. Even the ones that end up dying, that's sort of a spoiler. I'm sorry, but you'll figure out who it is anyway. They're very interesting. I will say there's a little bit of a plot hole in it. Like, the whole premise is that the killers only are interested in the focal point of the curse, right? The ghost murderers. So they're only coming after Sam. The only reason why they came after the other kids is because Sam's blood was on their shirt. If they got rid of it, the ghosts would probably leave them alone. However, definitely early in this film, I think the skull mask person is over here slashing up nurses and stuff. I mean, I suppose they could have been covered in Sam's blood while trying to care for her after the crash, but in a sense, it didn't make sense for them to come and like kill people in the hospital. But I digress. I usually hate movie adaptations of books because it never does it justice, but that's just what you're gonna have to expect with movies that are adapted from books. I mean, of course, with books, you're gonna get more detail. It's gonna be a little bit more precise. Where a movie, they only have like and maybe an hour 30, 2 hours, if it's going to be lengthy, to kind of fit everything in. Like, take Twilight, for example. I was definitely into all the books. I've read all of them like in the span of the summer, and then I watched all the videos, the movies for it too, and I was always left disappointed because they never accurately depicted the details. Now, I never read Fear Street, but this is kind of like the thing that I got from some of the reviews of other people. Another review that came out was just like, it didn't make sense, which, yeah, sure, but it's a freaking trilogy. Like, you're gonna get more info the more you watch. So you're gonna get more of a revelation of things after you see the second and third film. I will say that with Fear Street 1994, I liked it. I honestly, personally liked how things go. I went. R.L. Stine is kind of a genius with horror anyway. Very, very adept to making you feel uncomfortable. I wasn't expecting anything less from him. I do think that the story will build upon more. So I'm gonna be watching that, and hopefully I can get more of like a consensus of things as I keep on watching. This was definitely a hit. You know, Netflix sometimes misses on certain things, but I really like the way the story goes. It gives you just enough to keep you interested. So, yeah, go watch it for yourself. Because the only way you're going to get your own opinion about movies is if you do watch it for yourself. You may hate it, and that's totally fine. You know, everyone has different opinions. But I do recommend actually going to look at the film. So that's my thoughts. I'm going to go watch the second film now, and I will make another video.